Hello, welcome to the CarCast+Edmunds podcast. I'm Matt, the moderator, Deandra, here with Alistair Weaver. Good day.
Good day. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Not so bad. Friday afternoon. I had a cold all week. It just, but you don't like get. I don't know. Everybody seems to have a cold at the moment. You're just like fighting it off and fighting it off. You're not like properly ill enough to not do stuff, but just feel a bit
Yeah.
rubbish. That's me this week. But it's all right. Stop complaining.
Uh, Before we get started, the world's biggest betting weekend of the year is finally here, which means more updated odds and props for Super Sunday. Bet Online, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. We have hundreds of prop bets, MVP odds, and exclusive in-game live betting. BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline offers you everything and more to enhance the game day experience. Visit the website today to make game day action count a little bit more. BetOnline, the game starts here. I was just looking up some statistics that are not going to mean anything to our listeners, but are going to be relevant to you. And it is in fiscal year 2023 to 2024, the city of Los Angeles made $115 million on parking tickets.
That's
Raise your hand if you've contributed to that.
the context to this is I've just got a citation for parking in a street cleaning zone around the corner from my house. And at the same time, not having a front number plate on the Tesla that I was driving, so it's a double whammy for Friday morning. It's nice around here. They clean the streets every Friday morning, but that means I've got nowhere to park. So
Yeah.
everybody just drives around in circles trying to find the one parking space that's free. Anyway, I got nicked. It's fair cop. I'll pay up.
What can you think of a more thankless job than the meter maid, than the parking attendant?
Do you
Like
know what?
everybody hates you. Nobody it's and all you do is just make people angry all day.
Do you know what? You think it's bad here? In London, they privatized it. And so what
Really?
basically what they privatized this is where I used to live and where I had my house in London.
Yeah.
Used to park on the street and they privatized parking tickets. So basically what you ended up with is a whole bunch of guys on scooters, like little scooters,
Yeah.
going at high speed around every neighborhood, just waiting for somebody to jump out of their car and try and grab a pint of milk, and then they would grab them while they were in there. Or if you were like 3 inches over the line of your bay or something, you were getting nicked. It was this like constant game. So you basically had to accept if you were living in London where I was, you had to budget every year that you were going to get, half a dozen tickets. So it's like a £300 extra tax every year. So LA is not quite as petty as that. It's a bit better. But yeah, it's still a good money spinner. So anyway, I'm 100 and what am I? $112 cheaper. Cheaper? $112 poorer,
Yeah.
did I say?
I I years ago when I first came out to California, I started a technology company, had a web development company, and eventually City of Santa Monica was a client of mine, and several different cities and stuff, and that included the Santa Monica Police Department. And this is 30 years ago, and I was just like, how much money do you guys make on parking tickets? It's just millions and millions of dollars. Even back then, when parking tickets were $37 or $47, they were already making like 10 million just on parking. Now it's probably 50 million. Like it's just a ridiculous amount of money. And so over the holidays, they would do like around the shopping areas like Third Street Promenade and, the shopping areas in Santa Monica, they would just put paper bags on the parking meters and going, there's going to be free parking for everybody during the holidays, during shopping, because they want the stores to do well and they want the tax revenue and whatever. So they sort of comped you in that regard. But it was like, you guys can afford it. They're like, yeah, totally can afford it. But
I'm really
anyway,
glad that I jumped back into my car and turned the wheels towards the curb because I was parked downhill. Because I think that could have been three violations. So,
yeah, I don't even know if they know about that out here in LA. I
oh,
mean,
oh, they know about it where I live for sure.
oh, do they? Because I mean, it's not like it's a San Francisco thing, but uh, it seems like very few people know about that, like in LA, like which way to turn the wheel,
I think the city,
roll
the
out into the
city of
street.
Manhattan Beach, which is where I live, I think they're pretty keen on that. But anyway, should we part my woes?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a bummer, but yeah. So we were talking a little bit, and you got your hands on the Toyota 4Runner. This is kind of a big deal for Toyota,
Yeah, I
but
mean it's a once in a decade experience, isn't it? Getting
it's
a new
yeah,
Forerunner, and it's yeah. I mean, this has been obviously been we've seen it last year, but this is the first time we've actually driven it. We actually brought a vehicle away from the press launch, so it's actually got pre-production stickers all over. It's always kind of cool when you have like, hey, this is pre-production. It's going to be a crusher. It's what we call a crusher, which is basically they can't sell it because it's pre-production. So once
yeah,
they finish doing like media drives and stuff, they'll either use it as an R&D car or it'll just end up in the in the great graveyard in the sky. But so we had a trail. This was a Trail Hunter version, which is the top spec in black.
okay,
Looked very cool, black with gold wheels,
yeah,
and it's
nice,
it's it's big. It feels big. Extended wheel arches, wide. It's obviously based on the Tacoma, which we know well, and that we own a Tacoma at the moment. And I think it's a really good. I mean, as you say, the review is up there that Clint wrote from the team, but it's a good Forerunner. It is if you love the old Forerunner, which let's face it was super old, you're going to really love the new one. Interior is the same as the Tacoma. The only thing is, if you don't go for the one with the big screen, and it ends up looking, like they do that thing where if you have the smaller screen version, they don't really integrate it properly. So they're almost like
yeah,
every day you get a new car, you're like, oh, should have worked harder at school. But the only thing about it, which I thought was kind of interesting, Toyota is peppering the market with these kind of off-road focused SUVs. So I mean, obviously you've got like the more road focused stuff, like the RAV4. But then you get into the Forerunner, and by the time you don't have to work hard at a Forerunner to get into 60, 70 grand. The Trail Hunter I had was 70,000 bucks, which seems feels like a fortune. And as soon as you get above like mid 50s towards 60 grand, then you're into Land Cruiser territory. And
yeah,
you're also getting close to Lexus GX, which is a fantastic vehicle. So what they've ended up doing is creating, and even Sequoia only starts in the early 60s and he's way bigger. So what they've ended up doing is kind of a massive overlap in their product lineup. So you can either have a top spec RAV4 or a mid to top spec RAV4 or a sort of slightly lesser spec Land Cruiser or even a GX. And all the Land Cruisers are hybrid by default. GX has the V6, so it's kind of an interesting positioning in the market. And I thought it was a really interesting vehicle, and it's good looking. It's obviously got loads of off-road hardware, particularly the Trail Hunter. But I thought this is 70 grand, and that just instinctively. I know everything's got expensive, but 70 grand just felt like a hell of a lot of money for a Forerunner.
yeah. But they're banking on some brand equity here. People are thinking, I want a 4Runner. There's a lot of legacy there. I know what it's capable of. I mean, I think so, but what's the power plant here?
So you've basically got a choice of two. And to be fair to Toyota, like your entry level point for Forerunner starts at about 41 grand, and and then you sort of go up from there. But there's no V6 anymore. It's a 4-pot and 4-pot hybrid. We've driven that engine lineup and stuff obviously in the Tacoma. In the Tacoma, we certainly prefer the hybrid. It was the hybrid that I drove during the week. Hybrid gives you a bit more power, but also a lot more torque.
Okay.
We're going to get it down the test track on Monday and run the figures. I mean, honestly, on the road, that torque is really useful. It feels fast enough. This is not designed to be like a quick vehicle, but you have to trade up in the trims in order to start getting into the hybrid. So you start at the SR5, which is what 41 grand, and we actually have a piece. It's pretty complicated. We have a piece on Edmunds. If you go to edmunds.com/news, all about the trims, because sort of
Yeah.
specifying these vehicles is pretty difficult. So you start with SR5, which is 41 grand, but then if you want a hybrid, you're getting into that starts at 52 for a TRD off-road. And then your limited, your more luxury start at 55 or 60 grand if you want a limited hybrid. So you start getting expensive pretty quickly. And if you want the off-road kit, then TRD off-road is 50 grand. And then you can build from there into your TRD Pro, which is 67 grand, or your Trail Hunter. So TRD Pro is more like fast off-roading. Trail Hunter is more like rock crawling. That's the sort of pitch. Trail Hunter, which looks really cool by the way, is 67 grand. So it ends up being a 70 grand truck by the time you've got it on the road. So it's and then you think what else is out there? Well, it's not just the Toyotas. You've also got things like Land Rover Defender at that kind of money,
Yeah.
which some ways feels like a more polished upmarket product. Bronco and Jeep end up being probably a little bit cheaper model for model. And then, as you say, the flip side is old 4Runner residuals are fantastic. Toyota has an amazing, reputation for reliability, good dealers. So maybe you're going to look at it and say, well, it might be a bit more, but I'm going to own this thing for the next 5, 10 years, and the residuals are going to be strong, so it's not going to break down. So it's a good thing. I showed my neighbor; he's got a Highlander, and he was all over it. Loved it.
But I would say this is it for the off-roader. This is where you want to go for all of those reasons. But now there's Land Cruiser that's back.
Yeah, and it kind of like Land Cruiser's gone in the other direction if you think about it. Land Cruiser started off as like 100 grand vehicle, and now starts in the 60s. So they made Land Cruiser a lot more accessible. So now you have this natural overlap, and then you've got Sequoia, which is based on the Tundra. So bear in mind that 4Runner is based on the Tacoma truck. Then you have Sequoia, which I kind of like because it's just so sort of like ludicrously big and amusing. That's based on the Tundra truck, but that starts in the 60s. So they're really peppering the market.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the what's it called? The 1960, what's it called? 1958 Land Cruiser. You got two different trims, yeah. And the 1958, the one with the round headlights, it's a bit more utilitarian. I think that's a cool looking truck. And then you've got like what they call a Land Cruiser that starts in the
Right.
early 60s.
Yeah, the trim with the round headlights. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty cool, really cool looking truck.
But the you said the Land Cruiser is only a hybrid, only a four-cylinder hybrid.
Yeah, so that's the hybrid that you can also get in the 4Runner, but you could only get that in the Land Cruiser. So you got to think about that in the pricing as well. And there's a few other things about the 4Runner which you kind of usually it's not that big. It's okay for interior space, but it's for a vehicle that feels like it's got a big footprint. Rear space is kind of okay, but not amazing.
Yeah.
And also, if you have the hybrid, because the way the batteries work, you can't have the seven-seater option. So in the normal four-cylinder, if you want a couple of like token rear chairs for your kids, you can have them. But if you have the hybrid, you can't. So it's a little bit compromised in those areas. We're actually going to do something up against the Bronco and the Jeep, and it'll be really interesting to see how it comes out.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool vehicle. It's got that kind of like alpha appeal about it.
Yeah. I mean, Bronco and Jeep, they're great, they're fun, but you know, every time I go and I look at them, like we're just at Barrett Jackson, I was with some friends. We looked at the Bronco and I was just like, I don't love the soft top on it. It just doesn't seem like it's very good quality, and the plastic windows don't look that great. And then the hard top is, I get it. It's just kind of a piece of plastic, and there's not much of a headliner involved, and it just sounds like it just looks like it would be loud, and whereas like 4Runner, a more conventional SUV, a little bit more polished, as it should be for 70,000 bucks. I mean, up to 70,000
Yeah.
bucks, but a little bit more of like an everyday driver, easy to make a phone call, not have a bunch of noise. Whereas like Bronco and Jeep, I still think you bring in some of those trade-offs.
They do, and certainly on the road, the 4Runner just feels like a slightly more polished vehicle. I think
Yeah.
I mean the Bronco steers better than the Jeep, and I think probably the 4Runner steers better than both. And yeah,
Yeah.
it has. I mean, let's face it, most of these, the 4Runner's strange because I think you've got a big aftermarket, and the whole idea of the Trail Hunter is that's Toyota's done the aftermarket for you. So there's a lot of people will buy something like a TRD off road and then try and spec it themselves. But it does feel like a slightly more sophisticated base point, whereas a Bronco and a Jeep, fun though they are, they're a bit wearing after a while. We own a Bronco and we had a Jeep for a long time, and yeah, like the 4 hours into the journey, you're kind of conscious that you're in a Jeep or a Bronco. They're pretty, there's a lot more wind noise and everything else than you would get in a traditional SUV for sure.
Yeah, right.
I mean, looking
Uh,
at this, I think like a TRD Sport, if you're not bothered about going into the mud, or like a TRD off road is probably the sweet spot. That's about 50 grand, which let's face it is kind of the average price of a new car these days.
yeah, I like we were saying before. I mean, like everything's expensive now, so uh, you know, it's tough to get into a new car for less than 40,000. And
We were
there's only
looking at buying we want to add a full size truck to our part of our like ownership fleet, and we're looking at a Ram this week, and it's like somebody came to me in the team and said, what about this one? I was like, it's 85 grand. Like, what the hell is that? Is that like, and it was like, well, no, that's kind of like mid, upper mid spec
yeah,
without, and it's not got quite this, and it's not got this, it's not got this that hypothetically you'd want. It's like 85 grand. I mean, like a Ram in a spec that you really look at and go, yeah, I really want that. She's like 100 grand now. Anyway,
yeah. I think they're going to be getting into the mid-sized truck market as well now that we've seen some success with like Ranger and the stuff from GM, Colorado
yeah.
or Tacoma and from Toyota. Like I think Ram's going to get back into that market. They've been a little slow on getting there, but
Yeah, and I
I
think
think they're going to
because
get
all the
there.
full size have got so big that there is now a kind of let's face it, a Ranger is kind of what a Ranger is still a big truck in if you go back 10,
Yeah.
20 years or whatever, 20 years, 30 years, it's still a big, comparatively big truck, and
So,
sorry.
again, we were at Barrett Jackson, and when you go inside a building and see vehicles, they always seem larger than they are, like in a parking lot. And when you see Maverick parked right next to Ranger, parked right next to an F-150, in this case, like a Raptor, you're like, oh, this isn't small, medium, and large. This is small, large, and larger. Because
Yeah.
like the Maverick does seem small,
Yes.
but a good
The
size.
Maverick
And
is the
then
Maverick is an escape SUV
yeah.
basically.
And then Ranger looks big and F-150 is massive. And this comes from a guy who drives an F-150.
Yeah.
And I'm just like you look at it and go, Ranger would be way more practical. But when you look at it like in a building on a carpet, you're like, it's still a big truck.
Yeah. I think if I was buying a truck today for me, like a Ranger Raptor would be, I just thought that was such a fun, just such a fun truck and a lot more
Yeah.
manageable, but still does truck stuff pretty well. But to conclude on the 4Runner, we're gonna do a test against the Jeep and the Bronco. I don't think I'm giving away trade secrets there. It's a pretty obvious thing to do. So maybe when we've done that, we'll get the team in and we can talk a little bit more about the compare and contrast them. But I think they know what they're doing. It's a good 4Runner.
Yeah. I mean, and it has to be, right? This is important
Yeah.
for Toyota. Just it not just in sales that they're going after, but in legacy of that name.
Yeah, it's like, well, you stuck with it for 10 years, so you better not screw it up.
I mean, Tacoma, you're saying is good, but there's a handful of people or more going not as good as what we had before.
Well, we prefer that we just done our Edmunds Top Rated Awards and we gave the nod to the Ranger in that track. I mean, they're all pretty good. Like we gave the Silverado last year. I think in our experience, the Tacoma's quite spec dependent. Like if you go for the hybrid version, it makes a significant difference in that truck. So we
Yeah.
would we would like tend to up spec that truck a little bit. So compared to the just the four cylinder, the hybrid makes a big difference. So yeah, it does feel the Tacoma feels a little bit spec dependent.
It's interesting because I was looking around at cars and stuff for, a friend the other day asking me questions about what to buy and was looking at Toyota and it's funny you say that the hybrid spec is the one to get. And I was looking at it and I was just like, you know what? Anything Toyota, they do hybrid so well. Like just you're pretty much just looking at the hybrid versions of whatever they have at this point.
Yeah, it's I mean it's also an economy thing and it depends how many miles you're doing. It's not just performance. But yeah, I'm like the image of hybrid and we were talking about this week. We look at our traffic on the site and the consumer interest in hybrids is just so big relative to what it used to be. But it's not, everybody thinks like the original Prius or whatever, all these compromisers, and it was this and it was that. The reality is it's just a slightly better gas engine. It's a
Yeah.
more efficient gas engine with a bit more torque that kind of combines the good attributes of having electric propulsion with gas. And so there's really, it's really all upside these days. So yeah, I mean, I think, the direction of travel is soon everything will be hybrid, and I think we just got to get over that a little bit.
When my mom got a RAV4 a number of years ago now, I mean, it just made more sense. Like she was buying it, not really leasing it, and was going to keep it for a long time. And it was quicker. It had better gas mileage. And if this is still the case, a better overall powertrain warranty because people are worried about the battery. So it has like a 10-year powertrain
Yeah.
warranty compared to the gas engine ones that didn't. I was like, well, then this is kind of what you want to buy. And it's so seamless that, it's not a plug-in hybrid, which would just be confusing for my mom or my brother or whatever. It's just like, why? And, for 13 miles of range, or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
plug-in hybrids are getting these days. Uh, and honestly, it's you don't really notice when it's going much from gas engine to non, to turning it off and just pure electric mode. It's just like it just makes the most sense.
And the other thing is, if you look at the residual values now,
Yeah.
you think where we are today, if you go forward 2 or 3 years and or 3 to 5 years and you're trying to sell this on, I don't know, but I suspect that the hybrids will actually be worth more than the gas. So you might pay 2 grand more. I suspect you're going to get that 2 grand back.
And I think that's a characteristic of Toyota because you would think anything with a battery you'd kind of want to stay away from. Anything, like the battery's going to have issues. And they're already saying that now, like in the supercar world. Like you go to buy a Ferrari, you'll hear people go, don't buy anything hybrid. If you're buying
Yeah.
Ferrari, just stay away from anything hybrid. You're just going to get maintenance nightmares and drop in value, and it's just not going to be there. Stick with the gas engine Ferraris. And maybe it's just because people don't drive them enough to to have that thing live, like the batteries survive. So, I mean, far cry from Toyota to Ferrari, but
Yeah, I think Toyota's just building enough. I think they'll be okay.
I think they're
I wouldn't
building
be too
enough.
I wouldn't be too concerned about the longevity of a Toyota hybrid
Yeah.
right now, but yeah, cool thing.
All right, let's just take a quick break. We'll be right back. Want to talk about Stellantis a little bit? What's going on
Yeah,
with that company?
yeah, Stellantis, which is
They
what,
lost the
13, 14,
CEO.
13, 14 brands. Yeah, we were talking about Jeep the other week. This week we had the Dodge CEO, global CEO Matt McAleer, really nice guy. He came into the office and had a chat to us and brought along a Charger EV.
Oh yeah.
Which I was really excited about because we've talked about it on the show. You've seen the pictures. It's a cool looking thing, and there's no question that the best thing about it is it just looks cool.
Yeah.
It looks, it has that sort of 60s vibe about it, but it looks contemporary. I think they've done a really nice job with, where they integrated the aero, particularly around the front end on the EV. So you get this
Yeah, that's a cool piece.
sort of front wing, but which you won't get on the gas cars, incidentally. On the gas cars, kind of a more traditional HUD, but on the EV, you get this kind of like almost front wing effect. It's also, and then the other thing I think, which is a really good idea, is it's got these like hidden hatches, so it looks like a sedan, but actually it's a hatch. And I think the idea of that, if you're trying to seduce people from an SUV,
Yeah.
the versatility goes up. Yet collect the classic lines, but give you the versatility of a hatchback. I think it makes a ton of sense. Audi are doing the same thing with the A5, but it's also massive. It's bigger. I think it's as wide as the old Hellcat. Remember, like, I had the big wheel arch extensions, and this is a full size car length, and it wasn't really until we got it into the office car park that you just get a sense of that. Or I parked it outside my house, and they're not doing different wheelbases. The 2-door and the 4-door are the same wheelbase. So actually, what you end up with is a genuinely big car with plenty. Even in the coupe, you got plenty of rear space. I can 6'4", I can sit behind myself, headroom. So, and with plenty of trunk as well. So, and a small frunk, it must be said. But again, we can talk about price, like it's 60, 70 grand, and it's 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 a really interesting vehicle. And I spent the day with with Matt, the CEO, and also with some of the comms team, and then drove the vehicle home at night. And it's a hard vehicle to place. It's a hard to work out like who
Yeah.
is this for and who is this going to really appeal to? Because I think what they've done is build an EV Dodge, and that's cool. But is the traditional Dodge customer going to buy one? And I have some reservations about that.
Yeah. So, Goldberg obviously being a big Dodge fan and having a big collection of it and even working with them, he went out and drove one. I think he went to the Radford school, had a great time there, got to drive it on the street, got to drive it on the track. And he came back with similar thoughts. He was saying, it looks good. It's He's a big guy, wide shoulders. He fits well in the car. He
Yeah.
thought the interior, they nailed it. He thought that was good. You're right, it's big, but he wasn't, too excited, to be the first in line to trade in any one of his Hellcats or gas engine cars for this. He was a little lost, like you are, on saying, who's the customer for this? Are you going to get Dodge fans or muscle car fans? I don't know. Probably not. At least on the EV one. And is this gonna is this appealing enough to bring new customers to the brand? Because now you're asking new customers, and in many cases, come to the brand and come to EV because you're probably not even in EV. Because I don't know, there's a lot of Tesla owners that are going to jump into Dodge Charger.
No, I think that's the conundrum, right? And even down to there was a big noise, if you pardon the pun, when they originally unveiled it about the fact that they developed this unique soundtrack for it. So it has, and what they've done apparently they've worked with some people in Hollywood, so they've tried to create like a sense of a V8, but they didn't just want to, they didn't just want to kind of grab an old, a Hemi and then apply it. So it's a sort of a V8 with a sort of
Meets Tron.
futuristic sci-fi blend of noises,
Yeah.
but
It's
also
Mad Max and Tron combined together into one sound. Like
yeah, and
those vehicles versus the Tron like motorcycles.
and there's two things that really stuck out to me. I mean, firstly, it's properly loud, both inside and out, so you're not getting away from that. I mean, obviously you can turn it completely down to silent, but if you go into track mode or you can individually configure it, it's proper loud. Like it's GT 500 loud. They told me the decibels, but it's probably not
Yeah.
racetrack friendly. I don't like the noise that much because it's just like it just emphasizes the fact that it's not a V8, and maybe I'm just the wrong generation. But again, like who's going to buy this? So if you think about somebody like me, I want to really love this car because I think it's characterful. It's that Americana. I think it looks fantastic. I think they've done a decent job with the interior. It's practical. It's spacious. Would I swap the Genesis for it? And I brought it home, grabbed my, I got, like,
Yeah.
called my wife and said, come and look at this. This could be our next car. She want to look at this. No, I don't think so. We are coming from a Genesis GV60, which is a very self-conscious electric car. And we had a
Yeah.
Tesla Model 3 before that. It's big, it's butch, it's alpha, it's it's so it's like the engine thing. I don't know. I'd almost rather they just go for a straight set V8 sounding. But then the other problem is you don't have. If you think about the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, which is similar money, that has like the little flappy paddle gearbox. And what they've done, I think, really well is they basically sampled a four-cylinder engine and then have built in all the pops and farts and the and the gear changes and everything else. So it feels believable.
Yeah.
The problem with this car is you don't have those gear changes because they don't have that technology.
Right.
So it's a bit like a CVT. You don't get that. You don't get that sort of gear change sense of it. So you've just almost like you just got this, and then it gets louder as you go
Yeah.
faster, and so it doesn't quite work for me. So it's like, what are you then left with? Well, you're left with something that goes really fast, like every EV does. So maybe that appeals to your V8 customer. It's way better to drive because it's that much, it's a new car. It's much more accomplished, all-wheel drive. I've no doubt it'll have it. We're testing it on Monday. I know it'll have a ton more grip. It'll go faster. It'll stop quicker.
Yeah.
But part of the appeal, as you well know, of like the Hellcats and stuff, is that they were just a bit mad.
Yeah.
And I remember taking the Black Ghost to the U-Drags track, and it being like bloody hell. It's like I apologize for my language, but it must be like hanging on to this thing. It just felt crude and a bit in your face, and not particularly sophisticated, but just appealing because of it. And this car is like, this car is so much better objectively, but you lose a little bit of that madness.
Goldberg said it doesn't do a burnout, which I think people
I
that have
don't know
driven
about
it.
that. I think they can do it. It's got a donut mode and it's also got a drift mode.
Yeah, so this came up. So they tried and tried, and it doesn't do a burnout, but that's a software issue that I think they're correcting. So they're working that in. It doesn't have like the line lock and the burnout and any of that. So they're working on that. And then the issue of the sound was, I know you experienced this a little bit on driving some EVs, but Goldberg went into this going, the sound is dumb. I don't need sound. If it's fake, why do I need it? And then after a day on the track, he was like, if it didn't have some sort of sound, I think I'd be throwing up all over the place. Like it's just a weird queasy thing. It probably hits harder for some people. He goes, he didn't love the sound like you're saying. He goes, but without it, he would immediately be getting sick. I think the Ioniq 5 probably does it far better than what Dodge is doing currently. But again, a software issue. Maybe they could downloadable a new sound. You want a pure V8 sound. Like, why not? Like,
Yeah,
you buy a new Mustang and they're like, hey, you could get, Fox body gauges in the gauge cluster because it's all digital, or maybe even download something new for a retro gauge package. Like, I mean, listen, all the car companies, especially with Dodge with direct connection, they want to sell you stuff. So why not just go to their catalog and, for a couple of bucks, download a new sound into your car?
I mean, I think that's all doable. I mean, the other thing about it is just again, well, I talking about the 4Runner, but just the price. There's an argument that says, well, it's cheaper than a Hellcat was, and you get more performance. So that's the positive argument.
Yeah.
The negative argument is it's 60, 70 grand, and that's a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the EV space, like we were saying, well, what's the rival? And the reality is the only other two-door coupe EV I can think of is the Rolls-Royce Spectre. Nobody else does a two-door EV coupe. I mean, Porsche will eventually, but
I
nobody
don't
else I
know.
can think of.
Is that big Jag a two door?
No, that's four-door.
I
And
guess
that's
it's
that's
four
still a
door.
couple of years away. So, but so the like what are the rivals? The Ioniq 5N is, and that's an SUV. Then it was like Model 3 Performance, and I drove home in the Model 3 Performance, and that's obviously my ticket for. But that's 55 grand. So, and it's a very, very different car. Tesla, you get into it compared to the Dodge, and it just feels like a car from the future by comparison, which is by design. Like the Dodge is trying to be a Dodge, and the Tesla is a Tesla. It's a different client. It's a different kind of car. But then what will happen is, Dodge will have to incentivize the leasers to get the lease rates down. Everybody will lease these cars. I mean, I think it's a hard job. Dodge is, if you think about where the direction of the industry and what Dodge stands for, that of all the brands at the moment is a tough gig.
When you put the gas engine in this car, you put the Hurricane engine in, you get 500 or whatever, 540 horsepower. Uh, do you think that's going to be the sellable version of the car? Do you think?
Yeah. I think they're
And
going to sell a ton of those because it's going to be cheaper as well, Matt. It's going to be, it's going to be the EV starts at 60 grand, goes to Scat Pack starts at 74. You can go up to 90 plus. Yeah, your six-cylinder version is probably maybe you'll even start in the 40s. At which point, very different proposition. Also, we see the four-door coming. I think the four-door is going to be more desirable just from a practicality
well, I mean, we all
perspective.
love the look of the current Challenger, but the four-door Charger outsells the Challenger. I don't know, 2 or 3 to 1, something like 3 to 1. Like,
Yeah, and now there's just going to be a four-door version of this, so same
yeah.
wheelbase. So I think that's going to be the one that sells. And this will be more like a kind of hero product on top of it. But
I wonder if
it's
they can get that six-cylinder engine to sound good. I mean, it's turbo,
it's a
so it's
good
good.
engine. Yeah, it's a good. I mean, the
Yeah.
fundamentals are good. And then
I I saw it as a crate engine at SEMA, and I was like, I like the specs on it. It's got good power. It's good packaging. I go, but as far as like the crate engine swap, Coyote engines are there's a lot of those, but like LS engines and Hellcat engines, the Hurricane engine is just ugly. Like you're gonna have to cover it. It's just what's going on with just random plastic tubing and stuff junk up on the top. Like it's not a good looking engine. It's not opening the hood of a Hellcat and seeing that big waffle maker of a supercharger there and decent cam covers. Like, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like the Coyote's not even that good at looking of an engine, but it's got some symmetry to it, especially in the new cars with the dual throttle bodies, just to create some symmetry to it. But that Hurricane engine was ugly. I just don't see a lot of people going, "Oh man, this is gonna look awesome under the hood." No, they're gonna come up with engine covers and custom pieces to make that a viable crate engine. Guess we'll find out in like a year or so at SEMA.
I mean, the other thing that we should call out, and I've got the website in front of me as we're talking, they still like Dodge has still got so many 2023 cars
Yeah,
available. I mean, you just have to go on the website, and if you look for like select your charger, it's like 23 or 24, like where the 25 cars. Um, it's like it's been a tough road for them recently. If you want a Hellcat or something brand new right now, not a drama.
yeah,
So, and there's probably some great deals to be done. So they're on a journey. They've got the Charger coming, then they're going to do a new Durango because the Durango, let's face it, is as, old as you and I. And then they're going to have to do a new Hornet as well. So, this is the start of a journey. But you can already get 0% API, I can see here, for 72 months on a Charger Daytona. So, yeah, it's it's a
they've
road.
got they got their work cut out for them on trying to sell these.
They have, but I mean, I like what it stands for, and I like the fact that they're trying to be true to themselves. It'd be really hard for them to have done like another just generic EV because that's not who they are. And the CEO is very, very open in saying, "Look, we have to be a polarizing brand, and if 85% of people don't like us, that's fine because we need to sell to those 15% because that's who we are." And I think that strategy makes a ton of sense. So it'll be really interesting. He was arguing that, it was at Barrett Jackson, it was at NADA. And what they found is if you can get bums on seats, if you pardon the Britishism, if you can actually
Yeah,
get people into the car and experience the car, then, he thinks it's an attractive option, particularly as a second car. So,
yeah.
people doing big miles, you have your Durango for the family, then you have one of these as your everyday car for when you're just going to work or whatever you're doing around, not going so far. So we will see. I really hope that. I really hope it as well because I mean it's a fun brand and great heritage, really cool looking thing. We'll see.
All right. So before we wrap up, shifting gears a little bit, Ford Performance had their big event, I think at Charlotte Motor Speedway, and announcing all the innovations and things to look forward with Ford. First of all, they won their class, GT3 class, at 24 Hours of Daytona. So congratulations. I think they got
Yeah.
first and third. That's huge for them. I don't think they've ever won that before. So that's good. Uh, we were talking about crate engines a second ago. Two new crate engines. They have a Megazilla, which is their 7.3 liter gas engine with a Whipple supercharger on it. You can buy it turnkey from the Ford Performance catalog. I don't have the pricing on it. You can get the control pack for it as well. 1,000+ horsepower. They didn't have the exact number for the 7.3 liter. I think, yeah, 7.3. And if you want to go Coyote engine, they have the Gen 4 Coyote. You can buy it with the Whipple supercharger as a turnkey crate engine as well. 800+ horsepower. I think they're getting like 810 or 830 in their cars with that Ford package. So yeah, you can get yourself a 800+ horsepower Coyote with a warranty. You can get it with a 2-year, 24,000
Yeah.
mile warranty if you buy it from Ford Performance. Um, and
I,
then, the other thing that I thought was interesting was they said they're going to Le Mans, and not just in one of the sports cars. They're looking at developing a prototype car. They want to win Le Mans overall.
Well, this was the big criticism last time around that with the GT. The GT was really cool, and it was like Ford's gone to Le Mans and won. It was like, well, you sort of won your class, which is, don't not to diminish the achievement, but it's not like when the GT, the original GT or GT41,
Yeah.
it won outright, whereas the GT won its class. So it's really exciting that they're going back, and it's all part of Ford's. Remember we had Jim Farley, the CEO, on the show. It's all part of this philosophy that no more boring cars.
Yeah.
It kind of parallel with Dodge in some ways, but we're going to do cool off-roaders. We're going to do sports cars. We're going to basically make desirable, interesting cars because that's where the margin is and that's who we are. And there's no point doing kind of same again kind of consumer products that the Chinese market and who others are gonna hoover that up. So it kind of makes sense to me. And I think probably the crate engine strategy and the motorsport stuff and everything else that they're doing all kind of ties into that strategy. So at least
And
it feels consistent, is what I'm saying.
And they have these dealer installed performance packages for the F-150 with the Coyote engine with the 5 liter and for the Mustang. And it's a package for both of those trucks where you're like for the truck and the car, instead of going to like a Roush or a Shelby if you can if you want, but you can get the Ford performance package, dealer installed, wheels, lowered suspension, some stripes and trim kits, supercharger packages, and they're both 800 plus horsepower. What's kind of cool though is because they keep bringing out like the entry level pickup truck, like standard cab, short bed, just like and putting that package onto it. Now, if you can get that package for the truck on the the crew cab or whatever, and when you do, the dampers and spring rates and stuff are calibrated for that truck, so it's not one kit for all the trucks. So you can build yourself a modern day supercharged like Ford Lightning if you wanted to. That's not an EV like traditional Ford Lightning that we know from before. So they're doing some fun stuff. And if you follow like the super van and the EVs that they did, the high performance EVs, and Pike Peaks car, they debuted the new version. It's a Mustang Mach-E, but they did like a full NASCAR treatment on it, like the wheels, tires, suspension. Although I think they're bringing it to Pikes Peak as well, but I think they're just saying it's a NASCAR version because they wanted to tie into that form of motorsport. So they're doing some fun stuff. It's fun to see the enthusiast side of things. We can talk about Toyota Camrys all day long, but it
Well,
is.
do you know who bought a dark horse this week?
I don't know.
We bought a dark horse this week.
Did you?
Watch this space.
Okay.
Might be a bit closer to home than you realize.
Yeah. All right.
Although it's not very dark horse in that it's bright blue.
That's okay.
Yeah, it looks very cool, but
You know,
not the stick.
that
We wanted
supercharger
one to
package,
we wanted
it-
one.
it's
Maybe
available on the Dark Horse.
it is available on the dark horse.
Yeah. So if you guys are going to do the year in that car, you might want to do the first half of the year Dark Horse, all of your testing,
Yeah.
and then second half of the year 800 horsepower version. Because you
Watch-
guys loved the GT 500.
Exactly. There's an interesting story around this. So
Did you get
watch
the
this
automatic or
space.
the stick?
Much to my chagrin, we bought the automatics. We wanted the performance, and the reality is that just the performance differential is just too great. The reality, if we bought the stick, I would have loved it, and so would like half my office. But every time we did anything with it, you would have been saying to the audience, every time you do a video, be saying, "Well, of course, we have the manual version, which is significantly slower than the auto version." So
Yeah.
from like a business perspective, didn't make sense. But like I was in the office and I was like, "Yeah, we're not buying." And it's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we need to buy the auto." I was like, "Really?"
It kind of takes it helps take away the driver variable when you're doing the testing and you're doing the U-drag videos, and at least you can go, it's fairly consistent because it's an automatic. I know
mean, I
people are
think
still going to say you don't know how to launch a GT500.
I would be less worried about that because I think we're all good enough to like be consistent with even with the manuals. But it's more that let's say you put it in an Edmunds U-Drags race and you're up against something, and everything else basically, let's face it, is auto. you're going to be starting with that disadvantage. So you're going to always have to have that caveat. And then if it loses, it's like, oh, well, it's lost, but it lost because it's up against an auto. So the reality is you just twist yourselves up in knots, but kind of a shame. I
Yeah.
like, that because also it's a really nice manual gearbox. So it's a kind of like a GT350 without the flat plane crank. But anyway, it's very cool. It's very blue.
Yeah, it's
I
cool.
haven't driven it yet. It literally turned up on Wednesday. So we're going to have some fun with that. I think we'll be talking about that more on the show coming up.
Yeah, listen, I'm interested. I've driven some of the new Mustangs. I don't know if I drove the Dark Horse. I don't know if they had that out at the event we went
It,
to. We
it's
drove,
yeah.
the Eco Boost and the GT
I've
and the
kind of let the
manuals
cat.
and the automatics and the convertibles and the coupes. I think I drove all of those.
I think we've
But
let
maybe
the
not.
cat out of the bag because I don't think we've even told the Ford people, the Ford guys, that we have it yet. But we'll
That's all
find
right.
out
They don't
soon.
listen to this show. It's
No.
fine.
Well, we'll find out.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out. All right. Listen, what else are we missing? What else you got going on? Anything else?
Che, we've got a few things bumming. I think we're going to probably talk about it a bit more next week. We're just driven the new GT3. Got a great video out on that. We had a fun Edmunds U-Drags this week, which is M3 thing. I shoot them all in a batch as well. It's M3 CS against Model 3 Performance.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw
Gas
that.
versus EV, that's always really popular. We've got a little film out around, all the new EVs coming out, updated BMW iX. It's a busy time. I feel like the year's kicked off now. There's a lot going on. So check it out, edmunds.com/news.
Cool. All right, guys. On that note, we're gonna wrap things up. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, keep the air in the spare and the bag in the wheel.